everyone for today's session. So I'll try to cover Burp Suite end-to-end in today's session. We are using Burp Suite Community Edition. We would actually mention the difference between the community and the pro. It would also cover the basics so that we would actually assume that the person watching this webinar actually has no information about this, and we would also cover some tips and tricks like how we can actually use some of the advanced features of this tool. So basically this is what Burp Suite looks like. This is a basic UI, and we would actually cover this tab by tab. So first thing is what is actually Burp Suite. So Burp Suite is a proxy. So everyone knows that. What actually it is, it's a proxy server. So what we do is when we start Burp Suite, a proxy server is actually created, and we can set that proxy server in our browser so that whatever traffic is actually sent from the browser is can be intercepted via Burp Suite. So basically this is a proxy tab. There's intercept, HTTP history, WebSockets, and options. So in the options tab, there's the first field is called proxy listeners. This is the IP address and the port on which Burp Suite is actually listening. By default, it's set to 8080, and the interface is localhost. This is fine for most cases. The only reason you would want to change this is suppose you are actually trying to intercept some traffic from a different device, like while doing pen testing from an Android device, you would actually need to change this another interface on which basically interface on which your Android device is present on the same network. So normally it's set to 8080 on localhost. So what we actually need to do is we need to set this proxy on the browser. Now about proxy, something very basic. It's that Google Chrome and Internet Explorer share the same proxy settings. So if you actually set a proxy on Chrome, Internet Explorer would also use that same settings. Firefox is different in this case. So what I do is I set Burp proxy on Firefox. So whatever actually research needs to be done while pen testing, that is done via Google Chrome, so that there's only limited amount of traffic that is actually intercepted. So this is how you set the proxy. You just go to options, you type prox, this thing comes settings. In the manual proxy, okay, so this is the local host, this is 8080, and ensure that this tick is there, if I suppose you want to intercept HTTPS as well. So once this thing is there, whatever website I actually visit, okay, so this is how you turn on the intercept mode in Burp Suite. Okay, so see, this is what it is. So the actual request that is going on CyberFrat is this. It's showing all this information. It's showing PHP session ID in the cookie value, indicating that this website is actually hosted on PHP and all that. I can modify the session ID. I can do whatever we want. HTTP history is another tab where whatever websites actually are intercepted via Burp Suite are shown. So you can actually see here, what all requests were there, what is modified, what is not modified, and all. So we are not doing anything malicious here. This is only to show the functionality of the tool. So if you look at this request, cyberfrat.com, this was the original request. This was the edited request. And this was the response which we've received. Now, below proxy listeners, these are some of the settings for what kind of request do you want to capture. So by default, this is there and this is fine for most cases. I hardly see any use case where this needs to be modified. This is something different, intercept server responses. This is disabled by default, but at times we might require to intercept the response as well. So if we want to do that, then we need to ensure that this option is checked and create these rules. Basically, I can just edit a rule. If content type header does not matches, I can enter anything, anything random. Now, ideally, every request should be intercepted because, nowhere the content type matches LLLL. So I create this kind of a rule if I want to, intercept responses as well. If I right click here, there's an option to add this particular request to any of the other tabs. I can do a spider from here, intruder, repeater, sequencer, etc., etc. So let's do, if I actually do a spider from here, then this is a web crawler. What it would actually do is it would crawl the website and it would list all the pages that are actually there. So this is the vulnerable app that we will be using for our demo. It's called BWAP. It's very good. It's if you guys want to learn web application pen testing, on your own, then this would be a very good point to start. So I can do this send to spider, click yes. So this is another thing. Whenever Burp actually sees that there is a post request there is a login form, it would actually prompt you for a username and password. However, one thing to remember here is that this functionality should not be touched if you guys are actually doing testing on production environment, because many times post data is actually used to submit the data. So if many requests are actually submitted, then it would hamper the database. So that is something that's not recommended. But if you guys still want, then you can always enter the what the values actually should be. So this is how the crawler is actually working. It shows that under this there's a directory called as BWAP. It shows that there's another directory called JS, which is basically my JavaScript files and other PHP files. And there are there's a very high possibility that many of this would show false positives, but this actually comes in quite handy. The next tab after spider is actually known as scanner. Now this is the functionality that is only present in the pro version, and it is not there in the community edition. But with that said, the scanner of Burp Suite it's not very good as compared to another ones. Basically, manual testing is always better as compared to automated, because many of the cases are actually not covered in automated test cases. For example, custom parameters, captcha values, etc., etc. But it's basically very self-explanatory. You just need to select this option, do an active scan. In Pro version, this would automatically be enabled. Now, before moving to Intruder, we would actually go to something known as Repeater, because this tab is something that is used the most often. The reason for that is, once I actually have a request in Repeater, I can send the request, I can see the response. I can modify the request however I want, the number of times I want. I can try different test cases as here. Let's do this another example. Another thing to notice is that your computer would actually keep on sending requests to different URLs. There are many background applications who also use the same proxy settings, or another tabs might also, since they are opened in Firefox, they will also send requests, they will also be intercepted. So suppose I don't want to intercept gstatic.com, I can actually select this, don't intercept request to this host. Okay, so this is the request that I'm talking about here. Here ABCD and password ABCD, security level 0. I'll send this to Repeater. This is the response that I'm getting. It's not very user friendly to read all this information. There's an option called as render that would show you how this response would actually look in a web browser. So here ABCD, it shows invalid credentials or user not activated. So if you guys actually observe something here, if I enter the correct username and password, the web page is actually giving me a response code of 302, which means it's causing me to redirect to the another web page. But if I enter something invalid, then it's giving me a response of 200 okay. And if I render that, showing me invalid credentials or user not activated. So normally, if you are testing a website and you want to try certain weak passwords like admin 123, etc., the best thing to do would be to capture that request in Repeater and try all these passwords manually one by one and look at the response codes and the size of the responses and basically how to do. So what if we actually want to brute force all these values? Like we want to brute force the password field. We want to try all the combinations. So, okay, let me just create a very small dictionary. Test. What I can actually do is I can do a right click on this request from repeater itself and I can move it to Intruder. Intruder has 4 tabs. The target, this is already set to everything by default. We don't need to modify it. Positions, payloads, and options. So it automatically selects some of the parameters that Burp feels should be modified. We can clear this all out and we can select whatever parameter we want. So here, what we want to do is this particular value needs to be modified. I'll set this to add. So whatever is actually covered by this special character will be replaced by the values that are there in the dictionary. The first attack type is sniper. I'll just paste the payload options here. These options are related to the performance of the attack, the number of retries or network failure, and pause before retry. Another thing to remember is that Intruder is very slow on Community Edition. That's why it's highly recommended to use a pro version for this attack. This is what this is the exact error that Burp Suite is giving. Attacks are time throttled. So if you guys actually see, this is what the request looks like. Our dictionary had 6 passwords, so it tried all 6 of those. And if you look at the length, the request with the correct password has a different length of only 578 characters, whereas the request with invalid passwords has length of 4501. And all of those actually requests have 4501. So I know we only had 6 passwords, but even if we have 1,000 passwords and we keep on running an attack like this for an hour, we can simply sort the request by length. We can view the request that actually has a different length and we can see what is actually different. This also has some possibility of false positive, but most of the time it will actually show you if the password is correct. Now, basically Intruder is used for brute force or dictionary, whatever you call it. There are 4 variants of this attack, as we will see. It's called sniper, battering ram, pitchfork, and cluster bomb. So before we proceed, any questions so far?
Yeah, there are some questions in the chat windows. And I think if someone has a question, please raise your hand. Manpreet, you have muted yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So fine. I can see already there are many questions.
You want me to read those or scroll in the chat window, or you want to read?
Let's continue since the list seems quite long and we are just getting started. We'll actually cover all of this, post the end of the session.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So now we actually understood what sniper actually does is it would try one attack against, this one position. I can also add multiple parameters in this type. Like those same 6 fields, I can add it here also. And if I start the attack, let's see what happens. So if you notice, at a time, only one parameter is actually getting modified. Like ABCD here was tried in login parameter, and ABCD here was tried in the password parameter. This is because the kind of attack is sniper. What if we want to send a request where ABCD is actually sent as both username and password? Then we would actually be using battering ram. So if you see, now ABCD is sent as login as well as password. This is a basic difference between these two. So suppose you actually have a list of usernames and a list of passwords, and you want to try, each not each password for each username, but the first password for the first username. So again, let's build our own dictionary. So suppose it's A, B, C, and D, and E, F. Suppose we want to try A, B, C, D, E, F individually as username. So pitchfork, I'll add this, and I'll add this again. And so now if you see, it's asking me for payload set 1 and 2. Payload set 1 is for login, payload set 2 is for password. So I'll just paste A, B, C, D, E, F in payload set 1. In payload set 2, I would do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'll start the attack. So basically that is what has happened here. For payload set A, the password was sent as 1, B, 2, C, 3, etc. The fourth attack is known as cluster bomb. Cluster bomb is basically, suppose you have a list of various usernames and various passwords, and you want to tie all these passwords against all these usernames. So in our case, basically A would be tried with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then B would be tried with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The number of requests actually sent here increases significantly, as we can see. A, B, C, D, E, F all are tried with 1, then A, B, C, D, E, F all are tried with 2, 3, 6. The most commonly used methods are sniper and cluster bomb. Cluster bomb is used for username password brute force, and sniper is used for basically if you want to brute force anything. Could be session IDs, could be parameters, could be and another thing we would actually cover is intruder based payloads for fuzzing. Now we have another login form. This is basically SQLi 16. If we send anything, it shows invalid credentials. Now, what if we want to tie SQL injection on any of these payloads? So obviously there are other tools like SQL map and Average and others, but Burp Suite itself gives you the functionality to test. What you actually need to do is you can download a list of various payloads. You can pass them in the in Intruder tab, and Burp would test all those out for you. And you can check with what is actually vulnerable again based on the responses. So one very good resource for that is a repository on GitHub known as FuzzDB. If you just do FuzzDB GitHub, you'll get the first link, which is a GitHub repository. Just do attack. It covers different attacks. Let's do SQL injection. We'll go to detect. Now it has different word lists based on the type of SQL database, because most of the payloads are actually different for MySQL, MS SQL, Oracle, etc. So let's do MySQL here. I'll again send this request to Intruder. I'll clear everything out. I want to test only the login field, whether it's vulnerable. I'll set the attack as sniper. I'll paste that list of payloads, what we got from GitHub repository, and I'll start the attack. So we can actually see that we two of the requests actually they've shown us a different response size. If you see this, you have an error in SQL syntax, check the manual. This error clearly indicates that the application is vulnerable to SQL injection. Next thing what you need to do is simply test in SQL map and you can download the entire database. What Burp actually has helped us here is we were very easily able to identify whether this parameter was actually vulnerable or not. Similarly, we can also download various lists for other attacks such as cross-site scripting or command injection. So another example is file upload. At times, while testing, what we want to determine is what are the extensions that are actually allowed. So I just looked at this particular file. This has n number of cases to bypass the extension check. What I can actually do again is on the parameter name where that actually includes the name of the file. I just need to select the extension in Intruder and I need to pass all these values in Intruder, and it would actually send a request with each of these file types, and based on the response we can determine what are the extensions that are allowed and what are the extensions that are not allowed. We have a similar list for ASP. Feel free to explore this repository. So rather than manually trying all these particular encoding schemes one by one, you can pass them in Intruder and view the response. Sequencer is a tab that is very hardly used. What basically it's built for is it has the ability to detect uniqueness among a series of tokens. So what you basically need to do is load different session IDs or cookie values, and it would analyze them for you, and it would determine whether these values are unique or they are predictable. So now what I've done is I've just pasted all these numbers from 100 to 223, and I'll just do an analyze now. So it shows that the overall quality of randomness within the sample is estimated to be extremely poor. So if something like this comes, then it clearly signifies that the parameters are actually quite predictable. So what you need to do, you need to capture various tokens and you need to analyze them. Burp can do that for you. You just need to load the request, right click, send to sequencer, and you need to do a start live capture. Another tab is called comparer. So comparer is used to highlight the difference between two different data fields. You could actually compare them byte by byte or word by word. So I'll just do an ABCDE. I'll paste it. I'll just do an ABCDZ. I'll paste it again. Now item 1 ABCDE, item 2 ABCDZ. I'll compare this byte by byte. It would actually highlight what is the byte that is different. So the main purpose where this is used is many times we actually have two different files where there are like very minor differences. We can actually paste that entire data in comparer and identify the different fields. The next tab is Decoder. Decoder also has encoding functionalities. So it shows encoding as well as decoding of all these types: URL encoding, HTML, base 64, ASCII, hex, octal, binary, gzip, etc. So base 64 is a very commonly used encoding. So if I type QWERTY here, it has encoded this value for me. Suppose I got this value from the internet or so, I can decode this again using decode as base 64. Smart decode is another feature. It tries to identify what is the encoding type that is used. It works at times, but many times it just won't. So it's always recommended to do that manually. So base 64 and this works. Burp Suite supports a series of extensions that can be included. You can download these extensions from the internet and load them whatever you want. Basically, these extensions are jar files normally. You just need to select and load them. For example, there are extensions built if you want to test for Java deserialization attack. You can load that extension and then you can actually see if your application is vulnerable to that or not. Project options. So something that is very important that I wanted to show to you is that in most of the organizations, when you're actually connected to a network, all your requests are actually sent via proxy. Now, that proxy is already configured in your web browser. So if you configure Burp Suite as proxy settings in your browser, then you won't be able to access the internet. So the solution to that is something known as upstream proxy. What you need to do is in your browser, you need to add the proxy settings for Burp Suite only. That is normally 127.0.0.1 with port as 8080. And in Burp Suite, you need to modify the proxy host, the proxy port. If there's an authentication enabled, you need to enter all that and you need to hit OK. However, that is one of the shortcomings of Burp Suite. It doesn't work very nicely with upstream proxy servers. From my personal experience, we've seen that in that case, Fiddler might be a better option. But in terms of other features and usability, Burp Suite is definitely way better. Last tab is the alert tab. You can keep an eye on it if you feel that something is not happening the way you want to. You can actually see all that in alerts. If it shows fail to connect to youtube.com, etc., then you might want to investigate that. Why is that not happening? But most of the time, it's okay to ignore this field. So I feel we've covered this end to end. One more thing that I'd like to cover is at times what would happen is Burp would not allow you to intercept the request if HSTS is enabled on website. So HSTS is a security feature. If you enable that on a website, then that website can only be accessed via HTTPS channel. So if you involve Burp Suite into that, then your browser might not allow you. It might give you an error. I'll just simply so this is what it would look like. The site certificate is not trusted. Normally, if HSTS is enabled, then it won't allow you to visit that website. So as a workaround for that, what you need to do is you need to install Burp certificate in your browser. I'll just show you how to do that. First thing, ensure that proxy settings are set in your browser. Go to HTTP Burp. You'll be shown this page. Click on CA certificate. Save this file. Then go to options, view certificates, click on import. Okay, so this certificate is already installed. So that is how you install a certificate. Since I've already installed it, it's giving me that error. So that's